Toronto-bound Dave Simon.
Yeah. Going to Toronto in a couple weeks' time for UFC 165, but I'll be going to Ottawa this Tuesday for SmackDown. Which I'm pretty excited about. WWE show on Friday night here at the Bell Center was awesome, and I'm looking forward to more wrestling on Tuesday for SmackDown in Ottawa. It's going to be a good time. I'm excited.
You bring the girlfriend for that?
No, I'm going with my brother.
Does she like going to the events?
Yeah, I've taken her a couple times. I took her to a non-televised event, what's called a house show, once, and she liked that, but she wanted to see the entrances. She wanted to see The Undertaker. I took her to the Breaking Point pay-per-view a few years ago, and she liked that because she got to see The Undertaker's pyro and his whole entrance and stuff like that. So, yeah, she's been a couple times, but I think that's enough.
All right, let's talk some MMA here on the program. Dave, what went down on Wednesday?
Wednesday night, there was a show in Brazil. It was a TV show. It was Ultimate Fight Night 28. You had Glover Teixeira in the main event getting the win over Ryan Bader. Co-main event, you saw Ronaldo Jacare Souza looking really impressive in his second fight in the UFC. He's a former Strikeforce middleweight champion, a guy with great jiu-jitsu, and he showed that he's also got great hands, a lot of power in those hands, knocking out the very tough Yushin Okami in the very first round of their fight, the co-main event on Wednesday night. I was really impressed with Jacare. The versatility that he showed on Wednesday night was really, really impressive. And then, of course, it was followed by The Ultimate Fighter, the debut episode. Of course, your favorite, Ronda Rousey, taking on Miesha Tate as the two coaches. And we saw the preliminary bouts this week, a 2-hour season premiere on Wednesday night. And you had the women's fights and the men's fights to get into the house. Then you saw Team Rousey and Team Tate make their team selections, and the first bout featuring very tough Shayna Baszler, somebody who could have been in the UFC without going through this whole Ultimate Fighter process. She'll be fighting on the first real episode of The Ultimate Fighter, as, you know, see them all in the house and stuff like that. But, yeah, big Wednesday night for the UFC. They had the fight night, then they had The Ultimate Fighter, and now we're just waiting, a little bit of a hiatus, until September 21st in Toronto, UFC 165. Johnny Bones Jones, Alexander Gustaffson for the UFC light heavyweight title.
Now, you've been talking about how often their events have been over the last few weeks, right? Yep. Wednesday and Saturday and Wednesday, and so what do you make of this layoff now? Is this a time for Dana White to go on vacation?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he needs a vacation. He flies all over the place, right? These are people too. They have lives, and he's got children and stuff like that. So he's got to take some time.
He's got kids, really?
Yeah. And
I'm trying to think of Dana White, in a fathering type of situation.
Yeah, he's a dad. I think he's got two sons, young boys, and you've seen them in his Dana White video blogs. Every once in a while, he shows him hanging out with his kids, doing different things, skateboarding or whatever. So he needs time off to relax, and UFC staff, they need time off. It's hard when it's go all the time. Sure. A show on a Saturday night in Milwaukee, and then Dana White has to go to Brazil on that Wednesday for a show over there. And they demand this guy at the post games. I mean, the conferences. They want to hear his sound bites. I mean, that's what people. It's almost a revenue generator in itself, right? You could have it sponsored by. I mean, whenever Dana White talks. Yeah, the Dana White media scrum brought to you by whatever. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Dana White is somebody people want to see. He's part of the UFC, right? He's part of the image. Yep. Yeah, he's one of the stars of the UFC, and people expect to see him. And he's the president as well, and he expects to be there and wants to go to all the fights. So right now, a little bit of a break. It sucks a little bit for the MMA fan. We always want to see fights continue. You don't really want a night off, but it's good to sort of reset as well, too, though. Right? Yeah, it's not bad to kind of sit back and evaluate where we're at and stuff like that, and it's time to do other things and not just focus on the fights at hand, but other things that are going on in the sport. What do you make of? It's also a good time to sort of take stock of him as president. I mean, nobody really challenges him not being president or any kind of change in leadership. What do you make of where the UFC is now, where it's going, growth, all that kind of stuff? I mean, obviously they absorb Strikeforce. They're starting to bring in women's fighting. They have the reality shows going on. They do
pay-per-views in different countries, Brazil, Canada, etc. What do you make of where they are right now in his leadership?
I mean, the UFC wouldn't be where it is today without Dana White. You can't argue otherwise. The sport of mixed martial arts was not really a sport before Dana White and the Fertittas took over the UFC. They've really brought it
underground before.
Yeah, I mean, it was banned from pay-per-view. They've brought it from the dark ages into Fox, into where we're at right now, where it is a sport. It is accepted as one of the mainstream sports, and it's just growing. So I would say Dana White is great for MMA. He's great for the UFC, and the sport would not be where it is without Dana White. A lot of people wonder, is Dana the guy to take them to that next step or whatever that may be? I don't know what that next step is. I think that right now they're in a really good spot. They're going to continue to grow. The sport continues to get bigger, and Dana White is there for the time being. He's talked about retirement in the past. I think he will retire at some point, but not anytime soon, and I don't think you need Dana White to go away. He's very good for the sport. He does, say some controversial things every now and then, but he's kept it pretty straight and narrow over the past couple of years and hasn't said anything that would make anyone look badly upon the UFC. So I think Dana White does a great job, and he's going to continue to do that.
What's his situation? What's his contract or investment, or how does it work with him in the UFC?
He's a 10% owner of the company. The Fertittas own 80%. Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta, they each own 40. So the Fertitta brothers, they own 80 together. Dana White owns 10, and some sheiks out in Abu Dhabi actually own another 10%. So that's how it is. He's an owner of the UFC. I'm not sure exactly how it's all split up, who gets what, how much he's getting paid. It's not a public company, so no one really knows.
Has there been chatter about that?
About how much Dana White is making?
No, about taking it public. Like the WWE, for example.
Yeah. It took a while for the WWE to go public. I think the UFC right now likes operating as a private company. I don't see them going public. I mean, the NFL is not a public company, but
Sure.
the NFL is kind of a different deal because it's multiple owners that own each team, whereas the UFC is kind of one owner for the whole franchise. Maybe they'll take it public one day. I mean, like you said, the WWE's done it, so you figure maybe the UFC would do it one day too. But there hasn't been any serious talk about it happening anytime soon.
All right, and before we go, Dave, you mentioned Toronto, the big fight. What's happening?
Yeah, John Jones is fighting Alexander Gustaffson. That's what's happening. It's for the UFC light heavyweight title. John Jones.
Have they started?
Do I need to explain to you who John Jones is?
I know. I'm well aware of who Bones Jones is. Now, have they started hyping it?
Yeah, there's been commercials and stuff like that. Pay-per-view posters and
All right, I get it.
Tickets are on sale now and stuff like that. So yeah.
All right. By the way,
ACC, Air Canada Center, September 21st. John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson, a lot of Canadian fighters on the card as well. Mike Ricci from here in Montreal, John McDessie from here in Montreal, Ivan Menjivar, Francis Carmon, all guys that train at the TriStar Gym, all live here in the city, and they'll all be fighting at UFC 165. So a lot of Canadian content, a lot of Montreal content as well on that card.
Game points here on TSN 690. We have an update in Green Bay and San Francisco. Vernon Davis, another touchdown. And so we will update you on all of this on the other side of the break. Our thanks, of course, to Dave Simon, Ringside Report Radio, Wednesdays and Fridays. Dave Simon MMA on Twitter, and ringsidereport.net is the site.
And, of course, congratulations to everybody with the FILA wrestling. Wrestling has been saved. Olympic wrestling back in the Olympic Games in 2020.
Oh, awesome.
And 2028 or whatever it is. So no baseball, no softball, no squash. But wrestling is saved, and that's what we needed to do. So the decision came down from the IOC today. Olympic wrestling is saved. It will be in the Olympics for the next several years, so fear not.
Well, it's one of these sports that was around back when the Olympics were even conceived.
Course.
So it wouldn't make sense for the wrestling not to be there.
It was silly to even think that there would be no wrestling, and it was silly for the IOC to kind of put pressure on wrestling, but we fixed it. We solved it. Big Twitter campaign to get it done, and I'm really happy. So congratulations to all the wrestlers out there. You'll be able to keep fighting and keep striving for that goal of the Olympic gold medal, right?
And we do decently in wrestling as well. So
damn right we do.
Yeah.
Canadians are good wrestlers.